There are two kinds of people in this world right now, those who agree with Matt Damon and those who do not. At least that seems to be the perspective of the hundreds of stories demanding we take sides ever since Damon made this comment about the Me Too movement during an appearance on ABC's Popcorn with Peter Travers last week.
I think we're in this watershed moment, and I think it's great, and I think it's wonderful that women who are feeling empowered to tell their stories. I do believe that there's a spectrum of behavior. There's a difference between, patting someone on the butt and rape or child molestation, right? Both of those behaviors need to be confronted and eradicated without question, but they shouldn't be conflated.
The backlash to that was swift. Actress Alyssa Milano took to Twitter saying there are different stages of cancer, some more treatable than others, but it's still cancer. And Damon's ex, actress Minnie Driver, went even further, tweeting, "You don't get to be hierarchical with abuse, and you don't get to tell women that because some guy only showed them their penis, their pain isn't as great as a woman who was raped." But then came articles like Joan Vanaki's in today's Globe, arguing that Matt Damon is right and asking, isn't it better to hear what men have to say than to tell them to just shut up, as Damon was angrily urged to do. Joining me, I hope, with all of the answers are Jen Deaderick, a freelance writer working on an illustrated history of women's citizenship, and Tina Opie, assistant professor of management at Babson College. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Adam.
So, Jen, let me start with you.
Sure.
Matt Damon has said a bunch of stuff lately.
Right.
He made the comments that we just saw to Peter Travers. He told Business Insider that not enough attention is being paid to guys who don't sexually harass women.
Yes.
He said he doesn't think Louis C.K. would do what he's been accused of doing again, basically masturbating in front of women, and that he's paid a huge price for his behavior. Which of the various things he has said do you find most objectionable?
Oh, well, that's hard to quantify. I don't think Matt Damon's like a bad guy. I think what we know about Matt Damon, and which is a definitive trait of Matt Damon's, is that he is a loyal friend, right? That's what he's known for. Right. He's had a friend since childhood that he does things with.
Right. Seen in such films as Good Will Hunting.
Seen in such films as Good Will Hunting. And I think that he's standing by his friends. He's a ride or die kind of friend, and he's worried about his friends. But I'm not worried that Matt Damon's going to be shut up. I'm not worried he's not going to talk anymore. I think he could start elevating people who maybe should be heard. And I think that's what is worrying me, is I think that he continues to make women feel like they can't speak out.
And you thought the comments that we saw, we have that little clip from the comment with Peter Travers where he talks about a hierarchy and the need to recognize a difference. Do you think that potentially will lead women who might have wanted to speak out about their experiences to remain silent?
I think it's the experts on that hierarchy are women. I think it implies that somehow women don't understand that.
But then what do you think? I mean, you're a woman. I'm a woman. What do you think about the idea of a hierarchy? So we'll take it out of Matt Damon and we'll put it in our court. What do you think?
I think that there are, of course there's a hierarchy, and that's already legally defined. But I think that in terms of the culture we're talking about in Me Too, right, where we're talking about things that keep women silent, things that keep women from following their careers, that those are on a continuum more than a hierarchy. And that being grabbed on the butt in your workplace, even if it's not a rape, is still like, wait a minute, it's like, is that going to happen? Is that,
but is that just semantics then? So you're saying he shouldn't have said hierarchy, he should have said it's a continuum, but the root of what he's saying is that it is not the same thing to rape someone as to molest a child, as to make a perverted joke.
But I think it's not.
But do you and I agree with that?
Of course.
Okay.
But I don't think it's that he said that there was a hierarchy. I think it's that he implied that women somehow didn't know that.
Well,
and that he was concerned that he needed to.
If that's his intent or his impact, then I would also agree that that's not appropriate, right? So we have some areas of commonality.
But Tina Opie, you didn't divine that intention in the comments he made the same way that Jen did?
I will be very honest with you. I don't try to divine people's intention, right? I think I look at what he said, look at the transcripts, listen to the video, and I say, okay, I'm going to assume that he has good intentions. Is there any merit to what he's saying? And what I would say is there is, right? I do not fully agree with everything that he said. I'm not a black woman who's going to come to the defense of a very privileged and wealthy white man. Let's just be real with that. But what I will say is that I think what he said has some merits. I do think it was poor timing. I do think he perhaps should have waited for this to maybe write it in your journal, Matt. And then keep it to yourself. And then as women come forward and figure out how we want to respond as women to this issue, then perhaps share some of these thoughts with a woman and let her say it. So
to the timing point, didn't he make the comments to Travers right around the same time that we were learning that Mira Sorvino and I think Ashley Judd, if memory serves me, hard to keep all this stuff straight, were basically blacklisted because they wouldn't go along with what Harvey Weinstein wanted them to do. So.
Right. It's just, it's like a two. It's like the big problem that we're facing right now isn't that white guys don't have enough opportunities to speak, or have enough defenses.
So you would say just seed the stage for Matt Damon at this point in time, and like you said, write it in your journal.
Write it in your journal. Keep it to yourself. But the other thing that I would say is that I think I consider myself a womanist, and if people know anything about the feminist movement, there's been some issues with feminism. As a black woman, I think it's important to say that, and I do think that many times in movements, so we have feminists who are jumping on Matt Damon for having these kinds of comments. But what I would say to feminists is, wear your pink hats when there are black women who are struggling and dying, et cetera, et cetera. So those things may seem like they're not the same issue, but they really are related, which is we're talking about whose voice should be heard.
Well, I definitely think, though, that the voices that we really have to hear aren't necessarily white men's voices. I think we can be in agreement on that. I think that I'm not worried about.
But sometimes it's not white women's voices we need to hear.
No, sure.
White women need to listen to black women.
But definitely,
and so on and so forth.
But I think it's the white guys who could sort of maybe step back for a minute.
So this strikes me as a white guy. I'll put it on the table. This strikes me as a really interesting issue. The question of who society determines when there's a hot button issue that is roiling the culture. Who gets to speak and who is told that they need to remain silent?
Yeah.
And I do find myself wondering, and of course my bias is I'm coming at this as a white male, but I do find myself wondering if potential allies in the or of the Me Too movement, white men of other races or ethnicities might be out there who maybe aren't fully down with the Me Too cause yet, but might be sympathetic or thinking their way through this stuff. Yeah. And then you got a famous white movie actor like Matt Damon who speaks out, says something that people may not find as unobjectionable, but who is told, you don't get to say this right now because you're a white guy. What happens then to the potential allies, white guys out there who might be thinking their way through this? Isn't there a risk of a backlash? Like, okay, I'm not going to be part of something.
There's going to be a backlash anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, there's going to be a backlash. And there always is a backlash.
And this is where the two of us may agree, because I would say, rather than trying to voice your opinion and get center stage, maybe educate yourself a little bit more. Maybe, as an ally, find out what women would like you to say when you're allying us. Right? As opposed to coming out with your own agenda or your own script or just speaking from the heart and being compassionate. Those are important things, but they need to be informed by the actual lived realities and experiences of people who are often marginalized, such as women and black people and Latinos and people of the LGBT community, etc.
He could take the opportunity to raise up those voices. I mean, he could have said, or he could have mentioned, like the New York Times just had the article about the women at the Ford plant who are still after, suing them years and stuff are still being harassed. So
is it fair to say, just for as a user's guide for people like me, to how to interact with this movement or not interact with it? Maybe if you have a question, if there's something that you're uneasy about, a concern, broach it in private first with a woman you know, as opposed to going on a show where you're being interviewed by another guy, white guy.
Well, let me do you one better. I would say, rather than, so this might sound offensive, but rather than burdening individual women with the job of educating you, maybe go and find some resources. For example, people have said, Tina, what do black people think? I'm like, go to Black Lives Matter. Find out, do some research yourself.
All right.
Go to Twitter.
Tina,
Twitter.
Opie, Jen Deaderick, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.